Alright then guys, welcome to the video, welcome back to the channel. This is a video of just my top most recommended mods for a Civic Type R EP3. I've owned this car for over 7.5 years now, and in that time I have taken it from basically a standard car. So this list is what I would consider, of all the things that I've done to this is like my top things that if you've got a Civic Type R EP3, you should be doing to yours as well. And I've also ordered these in like ranking of importance. So like first one is like least important, and then we're going to work our way through to what I think is the most important, but then at the same time a few of these are sort of in the same level. Anyway, you'll see as we get into it. Let's start working through the list, my top must-do mods for a Civic Type R EP3. And first up on this list, we have got a rocker cover. Now, I've said in loads of videos that this Mugen rocker cover is one of the favorite things I've done to this car, which is very true, but I'm not saying specifically this one is what you should think about getting. I'm just saying you should get a new or reconditioned rocker cover because they just transform the engine bay and make it look so much nicer in here. It does nothing for performance because it is so on show. When you open the bonnet, it's the main thing you see. So having that fresh just completely changes how the engine bay looks. Next up, we've got a Mugen spoiler. Again, doesn't have to be a full carbon one, but I just absolutely love how the Mugen spoiler looks on these Civics. They look so much better than the standard spoiler, and actually I can't even really remember what it looks like with a standard spoiler because I've had one for so long. Definitely one of my favorite things for the exterior of this. Even just like standard everything else with a Mugen spoiler makes such a nice difference to these cars. Next up has to be CarPlay. It is so useful and just completely modernizes the interior of these. I guess a doubled in head unit is really what I mean, I suppose, because Android Auto would also work too. Having the phone here, getting maps, everything just modernizes everything. Plus it just looks so much nicer in here, and because for me this car is the daily driver, having this is just invaluable because it's just way better than having the phone mounted somewhere, which I tried for years and was just annoying. So this is just such a nice clean solution that really updates the interior as well. Next up has to be seats. I've said this in many videos that I absolutely love these EK9 Recaros. They are so comfortable, just the right amount of hug, perfect for a daily. But obviously these things have got crazy expensive, so I'm not necessarily saying these seats. If you've got the standard Type R seats, an upgrade even to the Premier Edition Recaros, something like that, DC5 Recaros, or a completely different seat altogether is a great upgrade because they just give you a bit more support, hug you a little bit better, which gives you better driving enjoyment, because you've got to remember you sit in these things all the time. So you want to be a mixture of comfy for just cruising around, but also something that hugs you enough that when you're doing a more spirited drive, you're not sloshing about in the seat or anything. Now the next three things do all relate, so it's kind of hard to pick and choose on which order I would put these in, but you kind of need each of them to make it worth doing any of them. So first up of these three things is an inlet manifold. Now you're obviously going to want that to be able to get as much air into the engine, to be able to get as much power as possible when you eventually tune the car, and that is something you're going to need if you want to maximize the gains that you get from when you do get that tune. So I've got the Skunk 2 Ultra inlet, and this is an amazing inlet for power, but for me the downside now is that the price has come up on these to the point where it is a bit more of a harder sell than when I originally got mine, because it was a cheaper price then, which made it a much better way to get more horsepower per pound spent. I'm not saying that this is the only inlet you should be buying, because there are various different options that will get you different results based on, I suppose, on budget, but also looks if you want to go for the full carbon one by Prattworks, or going OEM Honda with RRC, RBC, that kind of stuff. So you are going to need an inlet manifold to get the most out of the car when you get a tune, so that's why it's on the list. And while we're here, we might as well move on to the next point, and that is an exhaust manifold. Now I ran my spoon manifold for a good 2 years before I got any sort of tune on the car, which was completely pointless basically. I gained nothing from it, and I would recommend not actually changing it until you know you're definitely going to be getting a map. And that's also the same with the inlet manifold, because it kind of ruins the fun of the car, because you've got to be more careful when going into Vtec because it changes the air fuel ratio, all that kind of stuff. So I would recommend doing both of these things when you know that you're definitely going to be getting an ECU remap. But an exhaust manifold, again, like the inlet manifold, is just about breathing mods. It's just about getting that airflow through the engine, because the engine is basically an air pump, and so flowing those gases out of the exhaust as quickly as possible means the most gains possible. I've got the solid fab big bore manifold. Again, there are various other exhaust manifolds where you'll gain some power as well, and with that it's a personal preference sort of thing. I absolutely love the solid fab one. I love that it's all V-banded into everything else as well, so that's really great. But again, not worth doing if you're not going to be getting a remap, because it's just wasted money in a way, because you're not going to see those gains on the standard tune. And part 3 of this 3 is an ECU remap itself, and you're obviously going to need other support mods, but we're going to get onto that in a bit. But an ECU remap for this car just transforms how this thing drives. It is absolutely amazing, and the point at which Vtec comes in, how much smoother it is in the mid-range and how much mid-range gain you get. I mean, I've gained over 50 horsepower in the mid-range, which is insane for like actually driving this thing about. It's a complete night and day difference, absolute game changer. Which is why it's on the list, and I didn't put it higher on the list just because it's not an essential thing, because the standard car is still fun to drive, but it's pretty high on the list just because of how much more fun it makes the car. And in terms of gains that you will actually see, I mean, this car does have dropping cams, which I definitely don't recommend as like a must-do mod. It's definitely more of a niche thing that you don't need to do. This car's running 254 brake horsepower now, and obviously over the 197, 200. These are standard. That is a pretty big jump, but it's not that peak number that's the most important bit. Like I've already said, that mid-range just transforms how this car is, and it's absolutely amazing. So I would fully recommend getting all of the bits you need to be able to get it mapped, but obviously that can be quite pricey, which is why this list is in the order that it is. Again, that will make sense. Okay, we're now in the territory of this list where you could chop and change each of these mods to any order, and I would recommend them almost all equally because they are all amazing. So first up, we've got an intake. This transforms the Vtec crossover sound. That alone is worth getting one, even if you don't gain power, because the sound is incredible. It's actually one of the things that I miss the most about not having a mapped car, is now because Vtec crossover for this is so smooth, I don't get that aggressive cam change sound that you get on the standard car. My intake of choice is the Tegoa Carbon intake. It sounds great, it looks amazing, and has great performance because it is that enclosed cold air feed. However, there are other options still that you can go for if you are just looking for the noise, but even if you're not looking for the performance gain, just the sound makes it fully worth it. It's actually the only reason I put one on the S2000, and they also look a lot nicer in the engine bay compared to the standard airbox. Next up, and potentially most importantly sound-wise, is an exhaust. These things sound so much better than standard when you put a catback exhaust on them, or even just a backbox. That is the path that I took. I originally started with just the spoon backbox, then got the spoon B pipe before switching out everything for the solid fab system. This solid fab system's amazing for daily driving as well as power gains. This is the super silent system. This to me is the best exhaust for a daily driven Civic that's looking to make as much power as possible. It ticks all the boxes for me. Still sounds amazing when you're on it, but just takes that edge off when you're just cruising around normally. But you don't have to go for this solid fab one. There are so many different exhausts for this car that you've got plenty to choose from. Just make sure if you're only planning on buying one exhaust that you buy the one that you're happy with the sound to do some research, but also is big enough diameter wise to make the power that you want to, because that could be a restricting factor. Like what happened with me with the spoon exhaust, which is one of the main reasons why I switched to the solid fab system. But either way, an exhaust system or just backbox for these things just wakes them up, makes them sound so much better, and just makes it more of a fun car to drive because you can actually hear it. Big win for me. This is a must. So now we're on to the list of things that I think make this car so much fun to drive, and that is obviously the handling of this thing. First up, let's talk about tires. Now, tires are the thing that keep you attached to the road. This is the only contact patch. You want to get some good tires on the car because it does transform how it drives. If you're tracking your car, you'll see a good few seconds of difference in track times, and you'll feel that difference on the road too. I've got the Michelin Pilot Sport 5s, and they've been pretty good. I'm actually more impressed with them in the wet than I am in the dry, but having that confidence confidence to know that you've got the grip makes such a difference when you're driving these things. And obviously, if it's the only thing keeping you attached to the road, you kind of want to get some sort of good tire. Again, plenty of other tires out there that are good. This is just what I've gone for this time, and I'm super happy with them because they are so much fun to drive. It seems crazy to then ruin that experience by putting some cheap tires on them. And so again, the next few of them are all related. The next thing is springs or coilovers for this thing. Now, apart from the obvious aesthetic differences with the car being lower and looking way better with a more track inspired stance, with those springs or coilovers obviously lowers the center of gravity, which enhances the driving experience. That is not to say that the standard suspension is bad. You could happily run that if you're happy to run it at standard ride height. I just think the combo of getting the car lower but also gaining that performance in the corners based on that lower center of gravity, but also different spring rates and what have you, does make such a massive difference to this car, and it's one of the main reasons why it's so high up on my list. It just ticks so many boxes for me. I do suppose the only downside to lowering the car is that your exhaust is going to scrape on more things, but I think it's a worthy trade-off, and that is why it's a must-do mod for me. Now, this one I guess is technically cheating because you do need rear camber arms for this as well, so include that in this, but getting a fast road alignment setup on one of these EP3s is a game changer. It is amazing. It is by far one of my favorite things I've done to this car. Just do it. Just get it done if you haven't done it already. You will honestly love it. Now, you can do that with either springs or coilovers. You don't need coilovers. I do think that getting the coilovers with more adjustment is obviously better because it can get dialed in a little bit more. But you will need those rear camber arms in the rear to be able to set it up right. The first time I drove it with the fast road setup was literally like a light bulb switch of, oh my God, how have I not had this before? It is truly amazing. Mine is from Motion Motorsport. Again, there are loads of other shops around the country that can offer the same sort of thing. Just go get it done and thank me later. It's so good. And then we have the limited slip differential in the gearbox, which obviously you can't see, but boy, can you feel it. It makes such a big difference to how this thing goes around a corner. The only way I can really explain it is as you turn in, you almost get sucked in towards the inside of the corner rather than understeering out, in most circumstances anyway. It inspires so much driver confidence as well as just improving the handling of this thing, and that is why it is so high up on the list. I really do think that with the mixture of a fast road alignment and a limited slip differential, it makes the biggest difference to this car on the same sort of level as getting it mapped. Doing the fast road setup and the LSD before doing power is definitely the move in my opinion, because you'll just enjoy the car way more even at standard power. It is so much fun. I've got a Quaife LSD in this, but again, plenty of other ones as M Factory. There's Spoon, there's loads of different ones, or even just the OEM LSD from the JDM EP3 DC5. And I think also you can run like a B series LSD as well. I'm not totally sure. But yeah, next time you're thinking of changing the clutch or just having to drop the gearbox for whatever reason, I would fully recommend putting an LSD in at that point, because obviously the gearbox has got to come out for that sort of job anyway. It makes such a massive difference to putting the power down, because obviously both front wheels are going to spin rather than just one tire firing it, and that is why it is also on this list. And so there we go. That is my list of must-do mods for a Civic Type R EP3. Let me know down below if you either have all of these mods already, think I'm wrong, or would just add or take away some of these. But to me, whilst looking over the whole car, of all the things that I've done to this thing, although I love all of them, that list is, for me, the top. I think it's 13 items are on this list. That's my top 13 things, bit of a weird number. As you can see, I haven't done just those 13, and I assume you guys haven't either. Please do consider subscribing if you stayed this long. It would really help the channel out, help me grow, and help me bring you more content like this moving forward. But also go check out the channel for loads more videos with this EP3, as well as plenty of S2000 content too. Don't forget to like this one, subscribe, comment down below what you think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.